Good morning, and welcome to the public meeting of the Standing Committee on Social Development. My name is Shauna Morgan. I'm the MLA for Yellowknife North and the acting chair of the Standing Committee on Social Development today. So we have a number of members joining online, so I'll ask them to introduce themselves for the record. Just going in order. We'll start with Ms. Yakalaya.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Yakala. I'm the member for Decho. Thank you.
Mr. Nersu.
Good morning. My name is George Nersu. I'm the MLA for the Mackenzie Delta.
Mr. Testart.
Good morning, Kieran Testart. I'm the member for Range Lake here at Yellowknife.
Okay, Ms. Waylon Armstrong.
Yes, good morning. My name is Jane Wayellen Armstrong, MLA for Mofi, Clutha Region. Thank you.
And we have Mr. Hawkins.
Good morning, Robert Hawkins, MLA for Yellowknife Center, and not a member of the committee, but certainly happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, members. So today we're going to receive a briefing as part of our study on how NWT legislation and policies can incorporate housing as a human right. So we're pleased to be joined by Borealis Development. We have the co-founder Afzal Suri and construction manager Mr. Glenn Tihuski. Please note, too, that this meeting is being live streamed to the Assembly's social media channels. I just want to remind all members and witnesses to direct all questions and comments to myself as chair and wait to be recognized before speaking to help us have a smooth meeting. So I'll now pass it over to our presenters. If you want to further introduce yourself, or you're welcome to just proceed with your presentation here today. Who would like to start? We have a person operating in the booth, the microphone, so they'll just go on automatically. But if you could just sort of put your hand up if you want to start, and there we go.
So my name is Afzal Suri. I am one of the co-founders for Borealis Development. Currently, we are converting the Forgotten Blanca building, which is the 10-story building in the core of downtown, into residential rental apartments. We started construction in April, and we should be tying things off, or we should be having it ready for occupancy fairly soon here. So from a developer's standpoint on the idea of housing being a human right, we're hoping to present a couple of ideas to the legislation to consider. The main, so the housing is a challenge up in the north. Personally, I've been here for about 14 years. I remember the first year that when I got here, I had to rent a hotel room for about 6 months before I could even find an apartment or anything to settle down in. Our inventory is, well, we lack inventory, but whatever is out there, it is aged quite a bit. And we need to take action to update our inventory or increase it if we want to see the north grow. That was one of the main reasons why we decided to go with this project. I know it has been empty for about a decade, but it was never executed by anyone because it was considered too challenging. We hired, I want to say we were very fortunate to hire the right people in the right roles to help execute this project, just to show the community and also the north that it can be done, and it can be done well within budget, and it can be done within the time frame that's allocated for it. It's such a delicate balance between the profitability and having that access for the affordable housing and from a developer's point of view, because at the end of the day, it is a business. We are employing people, we are increasing the economy, or we're helping the economy grow. What we did a little bit differently on this project, and we're hoping that we can, with the experience that we've gained from this project, hoping that we can help navigate some of the restrictions that we've come across, because essentially the first rendition of this project, or the first thought process, was that it would be completely 100% affordable housing. That was our dream to actually execute, but at that time no one was interested in any level of government that can't be that's not a viable option. So there weren't proper incentives to create that affordable housing. So what we had to do was we had to change our course a couple of times. And that's why it took us so long to actually start executing the project itself. I remember the previous housing minister, I wasn't even able to get a face-to-face with her to sit her down and explain the project to her. That's why it was more or less baffling that we're crying about housing and someone's willing to put in housing, but we weren't able to have a meeting with the previous MLA. Right now, currently, the programs are in place. They are supported, I guess, federally through CMHC. They are more focused towards social housing, nonprofit, and some of the other organizations in our community, essentially. The problem with those fundings are that the nonprofit and also some of the other things, they don't have the experience of building the housing. And what ends up happening is that they go over budget and they get taken advantage of. If there was a way that there could be a public-private partnership, that would significantly help improve housing in the north, number one. Number two, it can also help speed up the process of the lack of housing in the north for us. That's pretty much the quick gist of it. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, or just more to answer? Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm sure members will have lots of questions. We can have a good Q&A here. Just a reminder, to speak through the chairs for a smooth meeting. So we'll ask members to for their questions, and then it will go through me, and then perhaps either one of you, if you think you're the person who can best answer it, you can just sort of wave, and then your microphone will go on, or pass over to the other person if they have something more to add. Okay, so I'll ask members, do we have any questions? Okay.
My name is George Nears.
Okay, Mr. Nairsi, why don't you go first?
Okay, you just stated that you're having problems having a face-to-face meeting with the previous housing minister. Have you had any attempts at having a meeting with the present minister, Mrs. Katana? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Suri?
Well, we're already in the phase that we've got the financing. We're now at the point of completing the project, so there was no need. the minister, the Ryland Johnson, he was a key contact from the previous assembly. He did help quite a bit. He did try to reach out as well, but we didn't feel like we needed to go to the new minister where everything was essentially done. It was just execution at that point.
Mr. Nersu, do you have a follow-up?
How much units are you presently trying to execute at the present time? Thank you.
So I think he's looking for the time frame, or how long has it taken to be able to execute the project?
The construction phase, essentially we started demo in April. Will be done by February. Yeah.
Mr. Nersu, does that answer your question? It was a little bit muffled, so I just want to make sure that we answered the question correctly.
Thank you, Chair. I was just making reference to how many units that they were looking at executing during this time frame. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I totally got that wrong. So how many units will be opening up when the project is complete? Mr. Tichewski?
There'll be 72 units be opening up at the projected around the end of February. Completed.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go to our next member with a question is Ms. Yakalaya.
Good morning, and thank you for your presentation. You said you you started in April, you're going to be finished in February, and also you have 72 units now. Are those units for families, like 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? How many rooms are in the units? Thank you.
Mr. Tichewski?
There is 38 units that are 2 bedrooms. 36 units 2 bedroom and 36 that are 1 bedrooms. Each room has an independent bedroom, and each 2 bedroom has 2 bathrooms.
Okay, Ms. Yakalaya, do you have a follow-up?
So the people in there, they would be like shared. You have like shared laundry, and I'm just wondering about the shared laundry. What about parking and stuff like that? Thank you.
Mr. Suri?
So it would be shared laundry. You have to understand that we were working with an existing structure, right? There was no point, or it didn't make any sense to demolish the entire structure and then build it up again. So we were limited of what we can put in. The only thing, there is going to be shared laundry, and the parking is a little bit limited. However, the little bit of study that I did do, that people who work in downtown don't generally use their cars that often because parking is harder. So we're trying to revitalize the downtown, the same objective that the city had set out, to bring more people, to have a more lively downtown. And I think that executes it more than anything else.
Okay, thanks very much. Next, we have Mr. Testart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I commend you for taking this project on. I've known a few people in the property, in the developer world and property management world, and the Belanca building was kind of seen as an unworkable scenario. So it's great to see an entrepreneurial spirit being taken to this. How could we, as a government, have made that easier to get this development off the ground, and further incentivize more development, especially in the downtown core? Because I share your ambition for downtown revitalization as well. And I think it's very much a use it or lose it proposition. And putting more housing downtown, affordable housing in particular, is going to keep our core vibrant. So what can we do, and how can we help make more of this happen and help your development succeed in the long run? Thank you.
Mr. Suri?
I think there needs to be specific programs, like where there is a public/private partnership. I don't think we have anything like that in place, where instead of doing a completely public or a completely social program, where you incentivize a developer that this is a piece of property, right? This is what we're hoping to achieve out of it. Can you do it within a time frame? And this is the budget. The difference between a private entity and a public entity is whatever our budget is, that is the budget. There isn't more, there isn't any cost overruns. So when we do anything, or at least for Borealis, when we did anything, we knew that this is our cap. There is no funding, there is no going back to the bank and saying that, oh, by the way, due to this reason, we're short $1 million or $2 million, right? So we had to first plan it out to the nitty-gritty details, and we hired someone who is, actually Glenn, someone who's extremely experienced in doing multifamily, and the planning was the critical part, and that's the main reason why we were successful.
Mr. Tester, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Is this just a kind of funding piece that would make the biggest difference, or are there some regulatory change? For example, one of the things that has come up many times is the need for a territorial building code or territorial building standards that are different from the national building code that currently applies. Things like that. Like, is there a regulatory or legislation tool that could help, or is it mostly a financial burden that needs to be addressed? Thank you.
Mr. Tihuski.
On the building code, I've built in multiple provinces and built lots of buildings. The building code is not really a concern. Yeah, you guys have a very good standard of building codes here that we have to follow, like the NWT has a certain code, which was interesting for me because I've never built anything past the north of the 60th parallel, and I learned a lot too. But the financial need is always a good support thing that we need to, how could I say it? When you work, I've always worked in the private sector. So we really, I think, planning and execution. When I took this job on, he said, this is our budget. So then it's up to us as the construction team, how do we get there without affecting the code, without affecting the code, the quality of the building. And there is ways of doing it without jeopardizing it. And like Suri mentioned before, there is no extra money. So we got to do with it. How we come about it, that's our planning and execution. So we planned this building a year before we really actually executed it. We don't need to improve the code or implement new things. It's all in place. It's just getting the people up here and executing it and completing things. I don't know if I answered it properly, but financing is, and also to make the financing a little easier for the application. Sometimes it's quite a political situation, even in where I'm still building, is to get the funds in. And sometimes it takes a long period of time. Permits sometimes takes a long period of time. Can we narrow the permitting time down so that we can execute? if to get a permit down in a certain period of time, if it takes, say, a year from permits, that's a big cost to us as a contractor, because we want always kind of building and money rolling in, because we live off the financing really, because our operating costs on that, eh? So when you wait for a building permit or decisions coming from a city or provincial, sometimes they do extend to a long period of time. How can we shorten and bridge these times of getting us the information what we need? If we apply for a permit or we need some help with something, sometimes it takes a long time to get the answers, even in the pre-planning stage. Because then when we go to financing, then we got to extend our financing at times. We were fortunate on this build, everything did flow very, very well on this project.
Okay. I think that was two questions. Okay, I'm losing track now. Next, we have Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you for that. Well, first of all, I want to say that I sincerely appreciate the initiative brought forward by our presenters. I too have watched this building. As a matter of fact, I actually worked in the building a long time ago, and the small little narrative I will provide to give context is I can recall many of the developer coming along discussing this particular issue, the building that is, and looking at making it condos or accessible housing in some form. And it just always seemed to be like a Gordian knot, the uncrackable nut. How could they get through in a successful way? And of course, we all know money can solve any problems, but we, as our developers, will probably tell you firsthand, money isn't endless. And especially when you're in the private industry, it's very difficult. There's no one to go back to. So I guess really where I'm getting to my question, Madam Chair, is the fact that we have programs such as the mining incentive program, which the territorial government gets an 8-to-1 return. So I believe that's what was stated in the House by the minister. And of course, that's checked, if I recall, by the staff. So it's not just an industry claim, it's something that's verified through the system. We do that to stimulate the economy in the mining industry. For large-scale developers who want to bring new, accessible, even whether they're market rate or fixed rates for social development housing, accessible housing for disabled or seniors, etc. Is there a type of program that you could envision or you're aware of that would have helped make a difference to help get this project off the ground? And I want to context that, I could speak endlessly about air handling units and structural changes that made this a challenging project, which probably took the time to do it to get it to where it is today. But my question more is about the fact that because it was a challenging project, would there have been something that could have helped taken some of the stress away or risk away in order to help build momentum to be able to achieve a common end, which is provide housing? And, I don't have a problem with business making money. So is there something through an investment program, partnership program that you could envision would have helped? Thank you.
Mr. Suri.
I think a partnership would have helped significantly. We all know housing is a big issue in the Northwest Territories, right? So if we had some sort of partnership, whether if it was on a federal, territorial, or even a city-based level, it would have helped. It would have given us a little bit of confidence that we are going in this, because there were no plans on this building. Everything had to be essentially discovered, and then a major plan was made. So if we had a partner, whether it was territorial or even the city, that would have significantly helped us to execute this a little bit more confidently than anything else. Because there was no support unfortunately, from different levels of government. We had to we cannot afford to make this an affordable housing like we were planning to initially, right? Now, in the future, if there was a partnership program like we want to introduce, for example, 100 houses, our budget's, let's say, $30 million, right? And if that is something that's tendered, where there are basic needs that whatever the territory or whatever the city needs, like it has to have X number of units, X number of things, and let the developer take over, where I don't have so much risk in the game, but I stay within that budget. I think that would be something that would be attractive to any developer, right?
Okay, Mr. Hawkins, do you have a follow-up?
I do, thank you. Yeah, by all means. I mean, I understand business. I mean, I'm not a big business person, but I understand I understand business in the sense of there's a lot of risk, and certainly, I mean, people don't want it to collapse in the middle of it, and I can appreciate the stress that. Excuse me, I got a cough here for a second. Okay, I'm back. So. Again, I applaud the fact that you folks took this initiative on. I mean, it almost seemed like it was waiting for the right person or team, and clearly it waited for you folks. So you folks are definitely the ones that are bringing it to life, which is great. The only other question I have at this particular significant at this time is I'm curious on your layout of your project in the sense of accessible marketing for the housing or accessibility in the sense of who could be in the housing. I know CMHC has programs wherein they'll support private investment to ensure we provide some stabilized housing at a reasonable cost for folks. So in other words, those housing rentals come at a cap. And I'm just hopeful that if you have, I'm not looking for the financial details. It's none of my business per se. But what I am hopeful is the fact that you've engaged with CMHC to ensure that you can bring some accessible housing to people. You have 36 units, I think you said, in 2 bedrooms, 36 units, if I recall you correctly, you said for 1 bedroom. And if every bedroom was filled, not over capacity, but not under capacity. I mean, we're talking about positively impacting 108 people potentially downtown. It's quite a number. This could change the world for solid, stable housing. So, does your housing model work with CMHC and provide affordable housing for individuals, and or are you engaged in that to ensure that we can see that help the overall market here in the capital? Thank you.
Mr. Suri.
So as a corporation, we are still gonna do some sort of affordable housing in the building. Currently, we just wanna finish first to make sure how many we can actually afford to do affordable, number one. Number two, speaking of CMHC, they do a Northern Report once a year, usually in January. Personally, I find that the numbers or the data that they're using is either dated or very incorrect. Just because I don't see a 1750 for 1 bedroom in Yellowknife. The criteria that they use as what is affordable is essentially I believe it's 20% below market rate, right? 1750, if that is the market rate for 1 bedroom, that is extremely unaffordable for a single person or even a couple that's planning on living in a 1 bedroom. I think in this city at least. So I think there needs to be further I guess data collection by CMHC or some organization to actually see where do we stand, like what is the actual vacancy rate in Yellowknife or in the north. what is the actual cost of a one-bedroom or a two-bedroom or a three-bedroom or a bachelor's. What is the condition of these houses? So a lot of our inventory, like I've mentioned before, it is aged, right? I'm sure everyone has heard of horror stories where there's no heat in the building, or there are other issues in the building that is not suitable for any human to live. However, some of the citizens of the North, they don't have a choice. In order to have a roof over their head, they have to make compromises.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, we'll go to Ms. Whalen Armstrong.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Yes, I was gonna, okay, we really do need an affordable housing. With the high cost of living, people cannot afford housing, it's too expensive, especially in Yellowknife. For a 3-bedroom townhouse goes over $3,000 a month rent. So we really, I'm kind of disappointed because they did say that they're getting away from providing affordable housing. So I just want to ask if they checked with Indigenous government, maybe for partnership. That's one of the questions, and I still have another one after. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Suri.
So initially we did. Unfortunately, the government was not interested at that time because they had a couple of other things that they wanted to pursue. Yeah, that would answer. Yeah, they were not interested in doing some sort of partnership to develop this.
And just to clarify, you reached out to one Indigenous government or many? Or?
I reached out to one. Yeah, the main one. Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Whalen Armstrong, do you have a follow-up?
Okay. Yes. Well, just only one, we have a lot of members living in Yellowknife, so maybe, they should have, I would like, it would be nice if they reach out to many, because we do have a lot of members living in Yellowknife. It's not just my region, but other regions as well. And another one too is that I just wanted to ask if they reach out to Aurora College, or because Polytechnic will be coming, in the future, and if they or a partnership, did they reach out to them, because they are always looking for they need more housing as well, especially in Yellowknife. So I just wanted to know if they reach out to Aurora College for potential partnership as well. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Suri.
So just to backtrack a little bit, so there isn't a guideline on the Indigenous governments, like how many people we can reach out to or who would actually be interested. So when I reached out to one, I thought that it would be in their best interest to actually invest in something like that. That's the main reason why we only reached out to one. And with your follow-up question, Aurora College was actually reached out as well, and also several different nonprofits, but no one was interested. Now, when I started reaching out to Aurora College or some of the other organizations, this was before the planning stages even began, because I thought it would be an ideal housing campus for Aurora College, right in the middle of downtown. Parking's not overly needed. You could convert a couple of floors into some sort of campus-like situation. There could be a cafeteria downstairs. It made all the sense in the world for me, but at that time, Aurora College was not interested, and I don't think they were even pursuing the Polytech road. Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Whalen Armstrong, did you want to close the loop there, or was there anything? final that, having gotten that clarification, that you wanted to ask or mention?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, that is it's good to know because I know that it is an ideal location, especially for college, you know, to accommodate students and with families but another one too is that yeah, I think it would be nice if they can if we can get more information or for them to reach out to other indigenous government. Um, you know, I'm sure just only one is not good to reach out to one indigenous government, but if they can reach out to multiple indigenous government, because you know, I'm sure they will find some needs. So I would like to see that if they can reach out to more than one indigenous government and maybe reach out to Aurora College again, because I do support, and it is an ideal location for the students with families, and it's close. It's right in the center. And yeah, so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was more of a comment or a suggestion. I don't know if you wanted to respond to that. Okay, we'll keep going. I'll just ask a question of my own before we go back for a second round. You mentioned that the dream was to build 100% affordable housing. Can you explain what that model could have or would have looked like, in the sense of, would it have been, like when you talk about a P3, are you talking about public housing or social housing where the government sort of takes ownership in some way over the units, but partners with a private sector to sort of get it built, and then, you know, manages as sort of as the landlord? Or are you talking about a different model where there would still be a private landlord, but the government would somehow offer ongoing subsidies, or just subsidies at the initial stage when it's being built, and then there's some way to ensure that the rents are a certain, like below a certain level? Can you explain what the model was that you were envisioning if you could find certain government incentives?
The model that we had thought of was essentially build it to what the city needs, right? And then just let the government take over on a day-to-day operational basis, where we would just essentially exit out, work on another project. The government, I think, can monitor affordability a lot better than the private sector would. They have different, or the government has different motives than the private sector does, right? As long as we were able to find a capable organization to let them operate the entire building, we weren't looking to have ownership of this building at the end of the build, no.
Okay. Thanks for that. And so just to clarify, so is the plan now that Borealis will continue to be the landlord here, or are you still pursuing some opportunities for affordable housing in a different way, or that's gone and it's just going to be private sector landlord, either operated by yourself or someone else that you pass along to?
Well, currently we would be a private landlord, but we would, as an initiative from Borealis, we would bring a certain number of units to affordable. We have to finish the entire project to determine how many units that would be, because at the end of the day, we want to give back to the community that has supported the project, and there is a significant need for affordable housing. So we're not completely blind to that. Now, if an organization wanted to take over the entire building and run it however they see fit, I would be totally open to that as well.
Okay, thank you for those answers. We'll go back for round two. I think a few members have more questions. We'll start with Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you for that. During the witness's last answer for my question, actually, I didn't have any audio, but I can always reach out to him directly for further clarification from their perspective. That is, I know the developer. Just one area, just before I get into my question, just so you know, when I refer to partnership with respect to, say, for example, how Ontario doesn't invest Ontario, and my view is, if we're bringing affordable housing to the Northwest Territories, whether it's in Yellowknife or in the regions, I view as, if the government's investing money to get these projects off the ground, this is the only time I'd use this phrase, so it's not meant to be used outside of it, which is, if the government's investing a certain percentage, there would be an expectation there'd be rent controls and those particular things to help ensure that we provide housing at an affordable rate. So that, I don't know what that model would look like, and I can't stress that enough. But I mean, to me, that helps get the initiatives off the ground with a solid investor. We don't have that in place right now, but I mean, it's something that has always been on the back burner of my concerns on getting an investment in the ground to help people, whether it's in Yellowknife or in the regions, by all means. So to my question regarding permitting that was just mentioned earlier, I am a proponent for automatic permitting. Under certain conditions, clearly, automatic permitting being that an initiative such as this was certified by engineers, and I say plural because it obviously takes several, whether the architect is involved as necessary, and further. And this actually goes across both, in this case, the city's scope as well as the GNWT scope of permitting. And it doesn't just end there, but I mean, those are generally the main challenging ones. And again, they have to be certified by qualified engineers. So in other words, the projects have either been designed, built, renovated, etc., all according to the municipal bylaw and its requirements. In other words, it meets all those requirements, as well as the NBC. So for those of you who don't know what that is, that's the National Building Code. So did you have specific permitting issues? And that's really what I'm getting at, is where it was causing frustration. Because when you borrow money to get an initiative off the ground, I mean, you're making payments unless you've structured your program like that, but you're also, whether you're upfronting your cost or downstreaming it, the moment you get access to funds to help, you can start doing this initiative, and hence it becomes very expensive the longer it takes. And so if you were having challenges with permitting, could you be specific? Because even though we don't approve city permits at the territorial level, we're part of the bigger picture, which it feeds up into, and it could be part of a dialogue for the future. Thank you.
Mr. Suri.
For permitting, we didn't actually have any issues. Like I had mentioned before, that there was actually no file on hand. So essentially we had to reverse engineer the entire building. So structurally, with the architects and everyone. So we had to essentially, here's the building, but we don't know what it's made out of. So the structural engineer, the architect, the electrical, mechanical had to kind of figure out what was there, what is usable, what meets the code, and how can we bring it up to the latest code. So the easiest thing to do was, other than the elevators and a little section of the roof, we ripped it right down and we redid everything. So that includes all mechanical. Now our mechanical was run off a oil boiler, but to meet the sustainability criteria, we do have a pellet boiler in there as well. So there were certain sections that we actually hit that helped with the process. But as for permitting, there wasn't any big challenges other than actually figuring out what's there and where we actually need to go. There is, I think with a conversion, with any conversion, there isn't a set rule that if it's an existing building, what actually needs to happen. Because everyone does follow the NBC, but I think common sense should prevail. But there are certain challenges that we are experiencing now that we still have to overcome. Just not comfortable talking about them publicly, but yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hawkins, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. And just one other comment. I did hear it mentioned about CMHC's idea of what affordable rent is, and I too have always wondered how they've come up with those numbers. And I honestly think they're way below. They're ideal, but they're way below what actually is on the ground. So yes, I figure it's a matrix of a lot of things, and reality, in my opinion, is not one of them. So the last question I would have for our witnesses is, and I'm having audio trouble, so I'll probably sign off after I hear the answer, is would it have been easier to build elsewhere or develop elsewhere? And have you had similar experiences or challenges elsewhere? What would have made this project easier to get off the ground, or change the narrative by saying, yeah, we would have done it sooner? Or, if you could simplify by saying, these are the types of simple black and white roadblocks that, if we could have gotten around sooner, it would have made the difference, I guess. That's what I'm just trying to understand. This is a big undertaking, so in essence, would it have been easier to do somewhere else, or what would have made it easier to do here? If we could just sort of hit it directly like that. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Tichewski.
I'll talk more on the construction side, and let's really talk about the business side. But for me, on the construction, I've been in this industry for a long time. We really, truthfully, did not have any really difficulties for material, manpower. The biggest obstacle was finding places for the trades to stay. That was probably the most difficult, and also was transportation, like airlines' difficulty of getting people in and out. But those are obstacles. Construction is difficult. So was it a difficulty? No, it was just a hurdle that we had to jump. But bringing material up here, bringing trades up here, completing on time, if you look at it, 8 months, we've been really almost 8 months into this project. I think we did very well on the schedule. We met everybody's needs and expectations. There wasn't really any, because we were able to, just because of all the building I did, I was able to bring a lot of material in quickly, just relationships. And it wasn't that I was privileged actually to do the job. I came up here to prove a point that I hear in the news a lot, and I heard all the gossip how long it takes to get material here. We proved the point, it can be done. And it's private money. So, and we don't go over the budget, and it can be done. We stay within the budget. We still are safety driven, and we're still driven by the quality of the work. And I had a privilege, it was a privilege to do this. And I hear stories, how long it takes to do projects, how much they're over budget. That's just gossip I hear in the street. Then I do some search on it, on what you find on social media. So I think we're very proud of what we do to also help. Time is essence, because if we talk about it for 2 years, nothing's done in 2 years. We're able in here, we execute it. So there was another project. We're well educated on how we're going to do the next one, which will be better. And you could make housing more affordable if you do it within budget and time. You can't take a budget, a housing project, and drag it out for 3 years. There is nothing left, and then there's disappointment to all the people that are short of a housing. They talk among themselves. It was 3 years to do it, and we did this in eight months. then there's something broken within the construction industry, not the municipalities or the legislation. What are they doing wrong? We know it can be fixed, but are people prepared to fix it?
I would just like to add, where we succeeded was we found the right team to actually execute it. Like Glenn had mentioned that he wanted to prove a point, but if you look at his career, even in Alberta, from scratch, he's building 100 units every year for the last 10 years, from scratch, right? So the benefit that we had a structure. Yes, there were some challenges, but he wanted to show that it can be done. Now, he specializes in multifamily, right? It's not a big organization where there's so many overhead costs and certain people do certain things. This is, fortunately for us, we were able to find the perfect starting piece of the puzzle that helped everything lay out a lot easier.
Great, thank you very much. So next on our list, we have Ms. Yakalaya.
Thank you. Very good presentation. And I was thinking about, you were able to do things on budget, on time. So what population are you hoping to serve in Yellowknife? Like what population? Thank you. For the housing rent, for the rental units, I mean, sorry, for the rental units, thank you.
Mr. Surrey?
Because there was an existing structure, we had to work around certain structural items in the hallways and stuff. So we weren't able to make 3 bedrooms or family-friendly houses that might be a little bit bigger. So our focus essentially is gonna be for the young adults and maybe some of the Aurora College students that come out of town just to take a semester. I think there is an opportunity to reach out to the JTFN if they've got staff coming and going. Maybe they can rent out a unit or two because it's right there. And especially anyone who's starting off in this town. That's the main focus. Someone who's starting off in this town. We do have a younger population that a lot of they don't have families yet, so those are the groups that we're hoping to serve or help further their life as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Yakalai, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. There was when we asked when one of our my colleagues asked about if you reached out to the indigenous governments because there are opportunity to build affordable housing and in the regions. So and there's also training opportunities. So partnerships are possibly available. I'm not going to say they are, but they can possibly be reached within the regions outside of Yellowknife. And for the one in Yellowknife, like the partnership with Aurora College, that could be used for a training program or housing because the students need housing when they come to Yellowknife. It's sometimes students don't come because they don't have a place to stay. They want to go to school, but there's no place to stay for them in Yellowknife. So that's just more of a comment I wanted to make. And you're going to be opening in February. Do you have? It would be nice to take a tour of the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yakalai. Would that be possible? Are you going to be doing tours open to local leaders or
We can arrange some tours. I believe by the first week of January, we should be fairly
Close.
we'll be very close, and then it would just be the more detailing aspect of things. Maybe we can do something around that. Yeah.
great. Thank you very much. So next on my list, I have Mr. Narasu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My preference is to public housing versus market housing. I think in the smaller communities, regional centers, we have more of a need for public housing units. Can you envision your company expanding or looking into regional centers or the communities? I have a individual and from Fort McPherson who has a network of people throughout Canada and is willing to build public housing or affordable housing within the community of Fort McPherson, because right now we have a company that rents homes out. You stated that for your one-bedroom units, it may cost a little over $1,700, but right now these houses, market housing units that are being rented out. There was 5 units, and right now there's just one that's being rented because they put their rent up to $1,800 a month, and that's not including utilities. So I think it'll be cheaper if they can pay into a mortgage with what's being asked of these rents. And we have this individual who has worked been building homes in the past in this community alone. He has a network of people, and my question is, can you envision you're expanding your company into the regional centers or the communities? Because it is high cost for transportation, especially up to the Beaufort Delta region. It's quite costly to transport material from south to our centers here in the Beaufort Delta region. Thank you.
Mr. Surrey? Okay.
It was a little muffled, so I couldn't understand it fully, but I'm guessing he was asking if we're hoping to expand into other communities. In order for us to do that, we would need to understand the community, what the actual challenges are, and actually come up with a plan that actually makes sense. Because you wouldn't go to Wati and try to build a 6-story wood frame building, right? You would approach it a different way. So if there was some sort of understanding between a local government and a developer that this is what we need. However, the local government needs to hire someone that has an understanding of construction. It can't all be about policies. It has to be someone who's realistic about goals, knows what it actually costs to build. For example, even if I look at Glenn, that he has an exact idea, okay, regardless of what we're doing, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars per door to finish, get out of that building. Now, we just multiply it by the number of doors that you're putting in. There is obviously going to be infrastructure cost that is stagnant, but if it's, I think it was what, $250,000 to build out a full unit in Calgary, what are the additions that we're looking at? Sure, we're paying a little bit more for laborers to come up, or we're paying a little bit more for trades to come up. There's a little bit of shipping costs. Everything can be calculated, but it's so specific to region, you would actually have to slow down a little bit, understand what the actual challenges are, and then go from there.
Okay, Mr. Nersu, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, my reference was from public housing versus market housing. And, there is a bigger need for public housing. It's just unfortunate that there is a bigger need for public housing rather than market housing where someone can pay $1,800. It's just I've often asked several departments on how they can make this work, because it's one department paying for another department's. It's the education paying for these rent costs of housing. So it's just some cycle that I don't understand. I'm trying to work with the department or work with organizations in this community and other communities within my riding to see how we can get people into the workforce rather than relying on public housing units. My question was, if because there's a lot of talk about partnerships, and I have one individual that resides in Fort McPherson, who has a network of people throughout Canada, but he's having trouble getting into working with the housing department right now. So just, maybe if it's possible to expand into the regional centers or the communities. Just a little clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I guess the questions focus more on, are you interested in partnering if it's opportunities to provide public housing or with Indigenous governments to provide housing that Indigenous governments might manage or control? Is that something you've looked into or would be interested in getting into if there were members that had contacts or wanted to follow up with you?
At the end of the day, it's an opportunity, right? So we would explore every single opportunity that is available to us, as long as it's within a certain means that we can actually execute it, right? And also it serves not only just the corporation, but our employees, and also it has a lasting effect. So we would be open to it, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. You may have members following up to have some conversations in the future. Let's see, is there anyone else? There's no one else on the list. I just wanted to follow up myself. You mentioned that you are installing a pellet boiler in the building, and I wonder if you have explored opportunities or if you've been approached. So there's those who have been investigating the idea of a district biomass heating system in the downtown area, and I wonder if you've been part of those conversations and considered whether this building might have the potential in the future to link into a biomass district heating system, perhaps as a supplementary to the boiler you're already installing. Thank you. Mr. Surrey.
So I forget the organization, but there was a study that was done, I believe, 2 years ago for a district heating system for the entire downtown core. I was a little bit involved in it, but it didn't seem like we could wait until something like that would be developed. That's why we did decide to do our own for now. Now, our pellet boiler, and just because how efficient we've made the building, it does have the capacity of running it to the neighbor and even the 50/50 mall if they're interested. But again, that's something that can be explored a little bit later on. The boiler was essentially a grant that we got with GHG that helped make that happen. But I have read up on it, and I was involved when they were thinking about the downtown core itself having.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know that it's something that's on the radar and there might be potential in the future. Finally, I really noted your comments that it was really important to you to prove the point that this can be done on time and within budget, and noting that it seems that other parts of the construction construction industry or sector up here, I think you said something seems broken, something's not working. I wonder if you can comment more on what you see around you happening that others seem to keep falling into this trap of things going over budget or taking exorbitant amounts of time.
Okay.
Mr. Tihuski.
Yes, and it's not just here it's broken. It's broken in Alberta, it's broken in Saskatchewan. And like Suri mentioned previously, it's always a team effort. It's not about one person, but it's, do people in the construction industry take it as a trade? Do they take it as a career? Or is it just a job to them? I took it as a career, and I studied it. And I always look at better ways of doing things. And people is the planning. Do we really map it out really, really well? Well, how do you, when there's a hurdle, absolutely we had hurdles here. How do we deal with these hurdles? In the private world, because there's a private money, we have to come up very quickly with an answer. So when you bring in 30 men here and they're not working, what's the cost to the private guy per day? So we have to always come up and have the right, having the answer, right? So even in Calgary it happens today. There's a problem and sometimes it sits for a month, a building does not move. Why? Is it engineering? Is it city replying back? It's always a multiple of things, hey? Like Suri mentioned before, we had actually, the city was supportive for us of that. We didn't have any of this here. That's why we were successful on that. Permitting was, I'm just using when I say broadly, permitting in other jurisdictions and everything. Sometimes it takes a year to get a building permit, a year. And they want to, and this is where shortage of housing, when you're handcuffing the people that want to build and it's taking so long, even just to get a permit. We build a building, I build a building in a year. I'll turn 140 units out in a year. So how much of an impact does that help to housing in the city that I've been working in, even in here? If every builder could come and build and do it on time frame and on budget, how would that help the system in NWT? It would be unbelievable. It would just help it. We don't have to come up with bigger dreams or admirations. If everybody would just do what's supposed to be needed, is it easy to fix? No. But we have to start somewhere, and someone has to start leading the path that it can be done, and that it can be done, and and maybe other people will start to follow. Like we came up here, like all the trades that we brought up here, they also were kind of really motivated to show that it can be done. So I think someone has to lead, and I think we started the lead, and we could show. We got a lot of praise from a lot of the people that walked around there, and they just can't believe that we did it, but it can be done. Were we away from home? Yes. We signed up for it. I signed up for it. So, and I'm happy I did. Would I do it again? Yes, if the right opportunity was there. And I really believe if you do a joint venture with the government, and I've talked to Suri about this, a government and private sector, and build something. We don't want to own the building. We'll just build it for you. And and it can be done.
Great. I think that's a really positive and encouraging note to end on. And it is inspiring to see an example of people who have proven what can be done. So thank you so much for joining us today. I think Not seeing any more questions from members, we're going to conclude today's briefing on public housing as a human right, and we will now conclude the public proceedings.